It's such a lovely place here down by the river, and it's really great to work with a lot of community groups who are interested in looking after the river and how it impacts on their lives.
Quite a long-standing groups that have been working around here. I don't think they're really connected, so the very fact that we've got the RiverLife project, such a big thing running, I think it's kind of coordinated people.
No, that's really good, but it's also good to see capital and investment on improving the river physically with the work on the weirs.
The barrier project's great. I can't wait to see the day that we get a salmon passing up the viewpoint at Howden.
No, that'll be absolutely fantastic to see.
So I used to live down at Cramond, and I've fished in the Amman since I was 12 years old. And I remember standing in front of the falls down at Cramond, watching the salmon time and time again going at the main face of the weir. And on occasion I saw fish at the box as well, jumping towards the chute and overshooting the box and landing just in the, basically grounding themselves and having to try and get back into the river. And I think at that point there, I was talking to one of the anglers up here, a chap, Paul Buchanan, and we started just sort of discussing what the compound effect of all these man-made barriers had on not just salmon or sea trout migration, but brown trout migration as well, and all the wildlife. So at that point there, and I think that was probably about 2009, 2010, we decided to do a bit of scoping to find out, what weirs existed on the Amman. We walked the entire main stem of the Amman and all the major tributaries as well, taking GPS locations of each of the man-made structures, photographs, and getting some rough dimensions as well. Took a wee bit of time, but it was good fun, and it's always interesting as you get to walk around the river and see places that you hadn't been at before. But I suppose the outcome really was we produced the document, the 5-year management plan for the Amman, submitted it into the 4th District Salmon Fishery Board, and then subsequently the weir at Cramond's now been done by the Forth Rivers Trust and the weir at Curtin as well, and I'm pleased to hear today that there's a weir starting on Monday. So I think, the anglers will recognise the work getting done. I would hope that non-anglers, as they're walking about, start to ask themselves, why is there a fish path going in? Why are their weirs getting improved? You kind of hope it pulls them all in, to that conservation side of things. Understanding, that it's not just a river, there's wildlife in the river as well. The opportunity to see otters, kingfisher, and all these fantastic beasts that, use this as a waterway. That's the kind of engagement that I would hope that you start getting. And as long as these things start a conversation, it's always great.
My name's Andy Brown. I'm the procurement manager for Memstar Limited here in Livingston. We recently moved into the building 4 years ago, and since then we've been aware of the walkways and the river behind us, which gets heavily used by our staff at lunchtimes for walking, for jogging, for cycling, for taking pictures. We've followed the progress of the fish ladder since its conception, installation and now operation, and we enjoy watching the proceedings and the wildlife coming up and down here. We have a variety of ducks, heron, and we've seen otters. It's just good to see the whole riverside being used to a full extent. You put a bunch of engineers in front of a fish ladder and watch the construction, and suddenly there's a great interest that evolves from non-interest to full interest to putting suggestions in. We've got a camera up there as well, which more people seem to be tuning into. Personally, I'm involved in an online photographic journal where I take a picture a day, and the fish ladder, the river, has become an increasingly important part of that. I have actually caught a picture of a trout jumping up the weir. It took me a while, it took me a good 40 minutes, but I have got a blurry image of a trout trying its best. But the journal also featured the fish ladder project from the start through to the the unveiling of it a wee while back there, so we have a history of it in progress, and we continue to do so on a regular basis. The journal also involves the whole length down to Livingston Village and back up towards Breach. So pictures appearing at various times throughout the year, seeing the different wildlife and the different changes of the seasons.
So I'm currently at Mid Calder, just a few miles from Livingston, 10 miles from Edinburgh. This weir here is probably one of the major barriers. I think it's the third major barrier on the system. Work should start on this next year. And by unlocking this weir, it'll allow access to both the Linus and the Muirston. There's a couple of issues with this particular weir, and as you can see the apron here, the fish generally will run up, jump onto this apron, and it's too shallow for them to run. The box is very turbulent as well, and the fish don't really use the box. However, I have seen fish going up there. Probably the most successful part of this weir is on the far bank when the river's a lot higher. The fish will hug the far bank and get over the top of the weir there, allowing them to progress further up the stream. So one of the key points by working with the biologists at the Forth Rivers Trust is they carry out the electrofishing on the river. So we found juvenile fish below this weir, but not very many above the weir, which is why we know that this is a major blockage to fish migration on the Amend. This kind of evidence helps back up funding that allows us to start work on these kind of structures in the rivers, hopefully opening it up and allowing the fish better access upstream. It's just a great place to come, get away from the stresses of life and just enjoy your surroundings.
I find lots of things in the river. Shopping trolleys are a big issue for me. They're dangerous, they're unsightly. I find household waste ranging from double beds, wardrobes, microwave ovens, children's toys, bicycles, scooters, motorbikes, bits of cars. All these things are not supposed to be there. Roadworks. Any roadworks happening close by the river, near a bridge, 50 metres, 100 metres. People would put a lot of effort getting some of those road signs and barriers into the river. What else do we have? We have our visitors, lots of visitors to the country park and the Amend. Some are great. They pick up their dog poo and put it in bags, take it away. Others discard it in the river or hang it from a tree. Really quite disappointing. We have other visitors who come and party, and it's great, everybody loves to have a party. But please don't leave your bag for life with your empty box and 24 cans of beer lying on the banks. It's no fun. I think you probably need a small boat to get out to that. Or some determined waders.
Yeah, and that eventually, with a bit more high water, that rubbish will end up down in the sea.
It's probably better that it's caught here, that at least it is retrievable.
Well, we need to work out where it's come from and try and stop people from putting it in the first place.
So we'll go root cause with it then, yeah. So all that's kind of incidental stuff, but we do have legal waste which ends up in the river. And you might wonder, legal waste? Well, this overflow here comes from the water treatment works, the sewage works to you and I. When we have high water, heavy rain, the drains get overcome. And anything that you've put down the toilet ends up coming out that overflow and into the river. Now, it's a recreational area. We're all encouraged to take exercise, take our kids out, family pets. I'm not sure that you want them paddling in there, certainly after an incident like that, or indeed at any other time. So stuff going down the toilet, there's baby wipes. They have increased massively, probably account for 90% of the stuff from toilets that we find in the banks. Sanitary towels, they're there, panty liners, condoms, toilet blocks, they're all there. When they come out, occasionally get stuck in the bushes and the bankside vegetation. If it doesn't, it gets wrapped around the rocks. Starts to break down very slowly. These things will last for 100 years in the river, the polyester stuff especially. and it breaks down, becomes part of the substrate of the beds. If you pull it out, it's all tied together. It's like pulling the hankies out of a magician's sleeve. It's ridiculous, and we really need to think carefully about what we're putting down the toilet. Scottish Water, they need to have an action plan, because they know when it takes place, when we have an overflow, they know when it takes place. Invariably, the stuff ends up stuck there and no one comes to clean it. Certainly somebody who's kitted up properly with the proper type of clothing and personal protective equipment. These guys are not here, and it ends up as members of the public and volunteers doing the job.
So that's the outflow. This is treated water from Mid-Calder wastewater treatment works. So this is after it's gone through the treatment process. It's tested by Scottish Water before it's discharged into the Almond and regulated by SEPA. The foaminess is probably additional amounts of phosphorus and other items that they can't actually clean quite so efficiently through the treatment works. And this is to do with people using washing powders and dishwasher powders and things that are more efficient these days, but the traditional wastewater treatment plants are unable to actually clean out before it goes in the river.
You'll see from the images around me, this is a beautiful little river here. It's great habitat for all sorts of wildlife: otters, kingfishers, there's roe deer, there's badgers and everything living in the banking. There's lots of brown trout, it's stuffed full of brown trout. So Armandale and Calderwood attracts hundreds of visitors every day. You come here with your kids, your dogs, and they maybe not like someone like me telling them what's in this river. So it could have a negative effect. People may not come and visit. Flip side of that is that people become involved and come and volunteer. Collect rubbish. They tell their others, their friends and their family not to drop rubbish, to take it away with them. They can put pressure on the government and the councils to try and do something about this, but people should come here and enjoy it. It is a beautiful place. Oh. Dynamite. Brilliant.
My name is Donald Noble, and I'm here because I contribute to or volunteer for the INS programme on the River Almond. I came involved because I fished for many years on the Almond, and I was lucky to get the chance to get more involved in looking after a stretch of it. As a result of that, I was looking around for help and guidance and training on that, and came across the Forth Rivers Trust and its help and its various training programmes, and one in particular which I kind of liked the look of, or I thought would be very useful, was the invasive species or the spraying course. And you know, it was amazing to learn the things that there's a lot I didn't know, and at the end of it I felt well and truly trained. I hadn't perhaps really fully appreciated the legal requirements for spraying, and that was one of the things that really came out of it. And so up and down this bit of the river there's quite a bit of a number of invasive species which have been my kind of battle over the last period of time, from the balsam to the Japanese knotweed and some giant hogweed as well. It's extremely satisfying actually, and I would encourage people to do it because it is a very satisfying exercise. You spray it one year, a very, very thick stand which is really blocking out the river, and then the next year you can walk up that river and most of it's gone, and it's extremely satisfying that way. Well, I'm a very keen angler, not very good angler, but a very keen angler, and I enjoy fishing a lot on the river, and that's one of the motivations and one of the pleasures of looking after the river as well.
What's happening now, we're trying to repair the banks, we're trying to get it fenced off. If you can't do anything else to improve the river, if you fence it off, a lot of the river will recover itself, the vegetation will recover itself, with a wee bit of help for us, hopefully. We've been doing brash, we've been doing willow weaving, we've been doing pinch points, putting bridges in over ditches that are a wee bit hard to get over. All these kinds of just to make it more accessible for people to use the river. And that's basically what we're aiming to do, is improve the river and encourage more people to use the river. And even just walking it, it's enough. This is, I'm standing on the riverbed actually. This is the stuff that they dug out of here and put up here. As I said, they totally destroyed it. They dropped the level down. That used to be lovely flowy water roughly all the way down there. It used to be, and then they dug it straight down. Totally. We tried to, that's as you can see, but we're trying to put a wee bit of movement back into it. And that's what we've been trying to do on all the phases that we've been doing, try to improve it a wee bit. That's a lovely one, but it's quite pleased with how that one turned out, and this one here is much the same. And you can see the flow getting drawn through and pushed through. Oh, there a fish just rose there now again. There it's back up again. Yeah. And also the salmon, obviously, we've now got salmon coming right up here, right up into Slomanan and above Slomanan, which would never happen. In actual fact, I would say probably until we started doing, putting the gravel beds in and putting pinch points in and making it a bit more, the habitat a bit better for them. But it could still do with more improving yet.
My name's Simon Bowers. I'm the countryside ranger here at Muiravenside Country Park. So Muiravenside Country Park is 170 acres of grassland, woodland, farmland and the River Avon, which borders the park. The interaction we have with the river and the Forth Rivers Trust is normally to do with invasive species. We have Himalayan balsam, Japanese knotweed, and to a certain extent Rhododendron ponticum, although that's not too much of an issue now. And the looking after the river, making sure the riverbanks aren't plastered with the stuff. And although we look after it on our own site, the problem obviously with the seeds migrating down the river, it's a constant problem. On the flip side of that, we're very lucky with regards to the animals we've got in the river. We've got kingfisher, otter, we've got nesting dippers, which is absolutely fantastic. Shows quite a lot about the water quality and about the amount of invertebrates. The latest event we did with the river critters, we did some kick sampling, found a huge amount of invertebrates in the bottom of the river, which is very, very positive for the wider biodiversity of the area. With regards to the Forth Rivers Trust, they've been very, very supportive with getting people through spraying courses and invasive courses that have helped us massively in the park and helped us keep especially the Japanese knotweed under control. It's a lot less of an issue now than it was when I started 4.5 years ago, and we've now got to the point of not so much spraying it but actually going along and doing individual stem injections, which is again will have less of an impact on the biodiversity, and that all comes out of the effort that was put in at the start by the Forth Rivers Trust. So the majority of people who come to the park to use the river are the angling association, so Slomanan Angling and Protective Association have the beats that run through the park. We also have a lot of dog walkers who come and engage with the river, so throw their dogs in. In the summer, we got a lot of children throwing themselves in, which is fantastic, you know, any kind of engagement with the river. Lucky enough this summer to see a few kids just lying down right on the river's edge, face down, looking at all the things that were crawling around in the bottom of the river and actually just physically engaging with it. Absolutely fantastic. The odd occasion we get people trying to play poo sticks as well off the aqueduct, which is a challenge in itself. Yeah, is one that's also always taken up by people.
I caught on the fly, only about 4 years ago now, my first ever salmon.
Yes.
And it was caught on the River Avon. Yes. Downstream of here, an 8-pound salmon, first ever I caught. So to me, that was a great credit to everything that the volunteers have done in this river.
Indeed.
I was able to catch a wild salmon,
yes.
The first ever.
We're in the business as volunteers on the river to try our best to improve things and to listen to the scientists and the Forth Rivers Trust, which is probably the best thing since sliced bread. We listen to them and try and take their advice accordingly. The big thing that happened was the water main burst 6 years ago on the Logie water, which sent half a hillside into the Logie and hence into the Avon. and that sand that came from that burst still affects the river. You can see the sand on some of the stones, and in the crevices between the rocks there's sand and algae growing, and we think that that is affecting the fly life. And the flies, certainly this past 2 or 3 years, the fly life hasn't been good at all.
But the important bit there, Alan, is that the sand and the silt between the rocks, that's where the flies start their life.
That's right.
In there, and if that's not there, the flies aren't there.
Yes. The flies this year have been the nymphs that live under the stones, which are kind of the caterpillars of the river fly world, have been minute. They haven't been growing, haven't been mature, and consequently haven't been hatching. Now if the insects aren't hatching, these are the insects that the trout live on, they come up through the water and hatch into flies and fly away, and that is when the trout catch them. And this year there have been very, very few trout rising. You've really had to look for them. So I think
that's been a bit of an issue throughout the UK, hasn't it, Alan?
It has indeed, yes. Lots of rivers throughout England and Scotland have been suffering from poor fly life. And I'm doing the monthly insect count. So every month or thereby, I'm in the river with a couple of other volunteers to count the numbers of insects under the stones. And that gives you an idea of the water quality. And if there's something wrong, if you're not catching insects, or as at the moment the insects are very small, it's an indication that there's something not quite right with the environment in the river. The only problem is that most of the people who are doing this are a bit like me. They're a bit long in the tooth. I'm now in my 80s.
I'm getting old.
I'm now in my 80s, and most of the other guys that do this work are in their 60s or 70s. So we need younger people to follow us. And if we get them now, we can teach them what to do on the river. We're trying to do that through having trout in the classroom projects in the primary schools, showing the children what there is in the river. They get fish eggs donated by the trust. They raise them in their classroom, and then when the little fish are big enough, they're put in the local burn. At that time, I get in the river and fish out some of the insects to show the children what the little fish feed on. And the children are mesmerised. They think it's wonderful, and so did their teachers.
There's a lot of passing adults on those days when we've done that down at the mains burn.
Indeed.
And the adults are more interested than the children in what's actually in the river. So it does have an impact, and it's a growing impact across the piece in the community. So we continue to do that which we can to help.
I think what's amazing is the amount of wildlife that there is, the birds, fish, in fact the brown trout, and all of them put up with this mess that have going on around it. And still manage to thrive against all the odds. The resilience of nature, and particularly rivers, I don't think can be underestimated, and they need to be protected to ensure that they continue to be so long into the future.
Yeah, these are it's definitely not ours to destroy. They need to be here for all our generations to follow us.